Behind me, alongside me, and now it is behind me, a Land Rover Discovery. No, actually, Freelander. A Freelander 1, but with a facelift. So it's a Freelander 1 with a slightly different face. And it's quite a nice face, actually, but it's not any better than the original face. Or is it? It's up to you. What do you reckon? Exterior-wise, there's not a huge difference between this and the original 1997 Land Rover Freelander, except for its face, whereas the facelift looks like it's had a nose job that's gone horribly wrong. Not sure why. Maybe they didn't think the car was long enough, so they give it another 3 or 4 inches sticking out the front. Headlamps, of course, look a little bit more purposeful with having this little dippy bit at the bottom. Why it's more purposeful, I don't really know. The clamshell bonnet is rather nice, rather lovely. So nice, in fact, that they actually decided to keep the same style of bonnet on the following car. It's got roof rails, meaning you can stick roof bars on the top of that and then carry around bikes. And the 5-door model is quite well proportioned. I prefer the 3-door, but the 5-door looks like it's not got too few doors. Whereas the 3-door model, which I prefer, looks like it's not got quite enough doors. This one's got the correct amount of doors. One thing I really like about these that they didn't have on the Freelander 2 was this. The big back door that opens up like that. Why that's so good, I don't know. I mean, actually, it could be at a disadvantage because now you need a great big space behind you in order to get in the back. Shut up, you. Most cars are the same length, whether they've got the rear door open or not. But this one's about 14.5 foot with the door closed, and now 17 foot with it open. Brilliant. If only the bonnet opens sideways as well, that looked really, really rather cool. And when I say cool, I mean something else. It's got 17-inch wheels, which are quite big and rather lacking in spokes, because you could say it's got 6 spokes, but in actual fact it's got 3. I like the design of those wheels. I've just been told what these wheels are called, and I'm going to Google them to find out whether they really are called that or whether this is just a setup to make my video look stupid. And I've done a Google search and I can't find it, so I'm not going to mention that in my video. Underneath the big clamshell bonnet we find a BMW engine, the BMW M47 engine, which apparently is the best engine you can ever get in a Rover of any kind. No, it's not. What's wrong with the L series? That's what I say. That's what they used to have in the Freelander. But, you know, someone's going to disagree with me on this, but I prefer the L series. I do like it from the back seat, actually. It's got this, what they call the stadium seating arrangement, where the roof line is ever so slightly higher up than it is at the back than it is at the front, except it's not. It's just an illusion. Still, we have some detail into the roof on these little nets here to put things in. You'd have to be rather choice in what you put in there, though, because that's not going to hold a great deal before it falls out. It's just going to fall out onto your lap, and if it's a bottle of water, that would be embarrassing and possibly painful. Ugh. Anyway, rear leg room, not great. And also, as you climb in and out of the rear, the arch kind of gets in the way a little bit because the wheelbase isn't actually that long. The front is set up very much for tall man position, and here it is. It has a few of the features from the original Freelander. Well, I say a few. These vents are the same. I think some of these buttons might be this. No, they're not. No, they're not the same. The dash is almost entirely different. It doesn't have the same amount of little cubby holes everywhere. This is different. It looks a bit more like a more modern Land Rover. Steering wheel's different. The instrument binnacle also different. And as already been pointed out, it's more like a Ford dash. The influence of Ford shining through in a way that you might not want it to do. What's actually surprising though is the amount of different materials and different bits of interior trim from this car to the one before. When you look at the outside, and it's almost exactly the same. Oh, good door shut sound. That sounds typically Rover. This one sounds typically Rover. I am a fan of these cars, so I'm unlikely to be disappointed when I take this car out for a drive, which I shall do in just a moment. Scratch on that door there. Another feature of the old Freelander, of course, is the spare wheel mounted to the tailgate, which on one hand is good because it looks really purposeful, but it also looks like it's easier to steal. And maybe that is the actual reason why on the Freelander 2 they put it somewhere more traditional, not on the outside where you can just grab it. What else I've noticed here, that brake light there. Yeah, rather than having a brake light up here, they've got one popping out of the spare wheel. It's almost like saying, hello, I'm here as well. It has the look of a curious alien eyeball looking at you whilst slowing down. It feels a bit like a Land Rover to drive actually, which is surprising. And you know why? Because when I drove the Freelander 2, I said it was a bit generic, I think, whereas this feels a bit more like a Land Rover. You've got to be a bit more careful with the way you choose your gears, especially being as the other one was an automatic and I didn't have to do any of that stuff. It pulls very nicely actually for its size, doesn't it? It is nice being in what feels more like a proper off-road where it doesn't look too big from the outside, but you sat quite high up, and you sat high up, the scuttle is quite low down, so you just see this big bonnet right in front of you that you can easily see over the edge of. Lovely big clamshell bonnet. I am very much a fan of the big clamshell. It's a lovely thing to what are you laughing at? It's a lovely thing to look over, a lovely thing to load it over your own bonnet and enjoy the performance of the M47 engine with approximately 115 brake horsepower. If it had 115 horsepower, it would feel really quick, but it doesn't. It has a bit less, apparently. The gear change is a bit, it doesn't feel that rovery actually, the gearbox. Has it got a different gearbox in this to what they have in the other Rovers, Boaty me?
Yeah, across the Rover group, every vehicle has its own gearbox. They don't have one that they all share, because then only one car would be able to be driven at a time. Whereas if each vehicle has a gearbox of their own,
yes,
then they can all be used independently.
That is a very, very helpful answer, that actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. Get the clutch properly engaged before you can change gear, because otherwise it feels like it's going to shout at you for not being careful enough.
Well, that's how manual gearboxes work. You do have to use the clutch in order to change gear. If you didn't have to use the clutch, then your forward motion would kind of not happen because you'd have no drive.
There's such... Without you here, I don't know what I'd say. I wouldn't know where to go with this. So helpful. Is it a likeable car? Do I like driving it? And the answer is, I might like it more if I didn't have this man next to me.
What is a very, very capable off-road vehicle. It's surprisingly well mannered on the road, and it's quite a relaxed vehicle. Quite a nice long distance touring vehicle because it does ride so very, very well, largely due to the 17-inch quims.
Yes, indeed. It does have a kind of effortless feel to the way it drives it. It's very smooth. It's not a sports car, but it's happy to go around the corners, provided you don't ask it to do it too quickly. That is my assumption. And it's a very relaxed drive as well. I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in seeing whether this car is quick or indeed aggressive on the corners, because it just doesn't encourage that kind of thing. It's the kind of car you just take for a walk on its wheels.
The 17-inch quims.
17-inch quims, as you keep saying. Which I did have a Google search for, and I couldn't find it. More to add, the seats are comfortable. The steering is nice.
They're jolly supportive, aren't they, the seats?
Yeah, I mean, they've been encouraging me throughout. The overall manners of this car are very, very good. Yes, it's the kind of car you could invite to a party and it won't embarrass you, and that's because of its classless nature. Even with a Freelander, there's still the kind of car that anybody could buy. Don't pull your face at me like that, Bert. It only just occurred to me that we are Bert and Ernie. Never mind hinge and bracket. It is a bit like driving a van though, isn't it?
The physical coupling is the moistened beaver.
Yeah, a dual mass.
The old dual mass
Yeah.
moist beaver.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it is. It's because otherwise you'd have a very jerky feeling with the clutch. You can actually swap this dual mass for a less troublesome solid clutch, but it can make your gearbox break, and it makes it less pleasurable to use. At least it does until it stops working. One successful test drive over without anybody running into the back of us.